What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to talk about why Tesla saw a slight red day despite the fact that almost the entire market pumped, and what's going on with the share price, at least thus far, after we just got some new pieces of news and data. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and software ends at the end of March. Anyways, as far as Tesla is going, please know that we had Donald Trump's inauguration yesterday, and the large majority of stocks are in the green. Finance is in the green, and so are many ETFs and futures. They held up very, very nicely. But two stocks were in the red. We had Apple and Tesla in the red. They're two of the most notable ones. Apple was in the red because we got a price target cut from JP Morgan to about $260 a share from $265. And then simultaneously, we saw their iPhone sales decline in China. So that's why Apple was a bit in the red. But how about Tesla? Why is Tesla down 0.57% on what happened today? Well, Tesla got a lot of bad news that came out, despite the fact that we gapped up after Trump's inauguration. We saw this big sell-off. But then after that happened, after we got that sell-off, some buyers returned and they defended a very, very key support. So as long as Tesla could hold this support that's existed since October, there's a good chance that it's going to continue to slowly uptrend back into the 430s. And we'll be watching that very, very closely going into tomorrow. So I'll talk more about the charts and such in just a couple of minutes. I first want to talk about the news that's very, very important and also what the data suggests for tomorrow. So the first piece of news is this. Donald Trump is officially president, and right now he's been signing lots and lots of these executive orders, and some of them are trying to halt the flow of funding for many EV charging infrastructure, at least from two different programs, which Tesla has benefited from. Now, you have to remember that with Trump being president, not everything he's going to do is going to benefit the EV sector and Tesla. That's just a fact. But Elon Musk has stated that despite that, he believes that this is going to be greatly offsetted by the fact that there's going to be a lot of deregulating of AI, and that's going to be a massive game changer for Tesla, and it's going to be very big for them. So he thinks that that's going to offset many of these negative policies, at least for Tesla. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, just know that Mr. Trump has a different view. So one thing that's happened is that looking at this information, Trump has signed many different executive orders, and one of them he declared that all agencies shall immediately pause this disbursement of funds from programs created by the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure laws. He also called out specifically to stop funding for EV charging stations that have been made available through the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, or NEVI, formula program, and also from the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant Program as well. So once again, not the best of news for Tesla. This is part of why we saw this little sell-off. There was also some shifts in the EV mandates, which could be involving tax credits and stuff, which could be affected by this. So that's part of why we saw a bit of a shift in the share prices for many EVs, especially Tesla. There's also this news that came out that's a little bit more negative about how federal regulators have opened a probe into about 2.6 million Tesla vehicles after a remote summoning feature reportedly led to crashes. Now, this is an old piece of news. We knew about this, but I think that they're going to increase this probe to cover more Teslas than before. Before, I think it was like 2.4 million or something like that. Now it's 2.6. So this is another piece of news. This is circulating in headlines again. It's obviously not new news. This has been going on since last week, but this is still making headlines. It's not the best of news for Tesla. There was some good news, however, and that's the fact that Tesla achieved 10,000 vehicle registrations, up 28.2% from 7,800 units the week before. That is down about 14.53% from the 11,700 in the same week last year. But if anything, they've sold about 23,000 vehicles in China for the first 3 weeks of January. And this is their overall registrations. Let's see if I can get this to look a little bigger. You guys can see that what's essentially going on is we saw a small decline in the first week of 2025. And since then, the sales have been starting to increase again. That's no surprise because typically when you hit the end of the year, the sales increase like crazy. And it tends to be this big dip, at least as time goes on. I think the new Model Y refresh is going to help those sales really increase. And Tesla's going to be completely fine. But this drop in sales is completely normal during a new year. And that's what's been happening, at least thus far in China. So that's what the data is suggesting. That's why Tesla ended up dipping the way it did. So what's happening to Tesla? We got some bad news involving like politics and other factors like that, which is completely normal. As far as Trump's administration goes, just know that there are going to be things that come out that don't benefit Tesla. But at the same time, there's going to be things that do benefit Tesla. And Musk, like I said before, believes that that's going to offset those bad things. So we'll see how it goes. But if anything, Tesla's still holding the support. And as long as this holds, we're going to continue this run. Now, for other factors involving the markets, just know that the majority of stocks were in the green. Amazon was green, Google was green, Meta was green. Almost every stock was in the green except for just like Apple and Tesla. And despite that, tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. We have some mortgage data coming out at 7 o'clock a.m., but it's very minor. Then at 8:55 a.m., we have the Red Book year over year coming out, not to mention some bill auctions and bond auctions at 11:30 a.m. and 1 p.m. So look for some volatility once all this data is released. But besides that, there's nothing else that's too crazy. Now, for earnings, we had Charles Schwab announce earnings. I did talk about this in the morning. They did relatively well with their earnings. And then just a couple of hours ago, we just got Netflix and United Airlines announced their earnings. Netflix is absolutely crushing it, hitting new all-time highs. Their earnings came out surpassing expectations. They saw their revenue up 16% to about $10.25 billion above what we were expecting. EPS is at $4.27 above expectations. By the end of 2024, they had 302 million members. That's a nice increase of about 19 million. Not bad whatsoever for Q4. On top of this, they also said that for the fiscal 2025, they're expecting revenue to increase, so they raised their guidance. And then they also did a share repurchase program by about $15 billion, which is very, very bullish news. For United Airlines, they also had good earnings. They beat on EPS and revenue at $3.26 per share, with revenue above expectations at $14.7 billion. They also adjusted their overall earnings so that they're now expecting EPS to be stronger than expected before, and overall good guidance in my personal opinion. So good guidance, good earnings. That's why United Airlines is up. One last thing that I'll talk about the charts. Right now, the market still has some fear. We'll see how this ends up reacting as we get closer to neutral. Momentum is still at fear, but this is bouncing off a key support. So SPY and the S&P 500 approach their 125 daily moving averages, and we're trying to bounce, which is a good sign that buyers are still defending. The put to call option ratio is rejecting here, which is a sign that we're seeing less of these puts being bought and more calls for the last 5 days. So buyers are returning after Trump's inauguration. And then also volatility is neutral. It's in the middle, but we're below our 50 daily moving average, which tends to be a bearish sign for the VIX, which tends to be bullish for the markets. So what's my view of Tesla in the markets? What do I think is going to happen? Here is my honest assessment. Looking at Tesla, when you zoom out, okay, all the way, when you zoom out, we're on an uptrend. Technically, we're making higher highs, higher lows. We've been doing this for the last couple of months. Now, when you look at the daily chart on Tesla, it's still showing a lot of life. It still looks like it's about to get a bullish cross in the PPO, despite the fact that volume is like not in the strongest of phases. It's still showing a lot of life. And I think overall we're doing a good job at still holding support. So there was a lot of bad news that came out that caused Tesla to dip, unfortunately, but we held support and we haven't lost this critical support quite yet. So it's very simple, okay? If Tesla loses around 413.5 to 415 tomorrow, this is where the trend line is going to be tomorrow. If we lose this trend line tomorrow and we close below this, then yes, Tesla could be dipping to 402 or even the 390s if we lose the trend line over here. So let me just draw this out real quick. So if Tesla gets a rejection, we lose this trend line like this, and we start losing this, I would become concerned if we get a close like this, because then Tesla could start dipping into like the 390s like that, right? But if we hold the trend line, so if we get some kind of dip like this tomorrow again, and we hold support, Tesla could slowly push for that, 430 to 440 target and eventually fill the gap for 450. So that's going to happen if we hold this trend line. What do I think is more probable? Looking at our current levels, as long as we hold above the 417 support at the 20 EMA and then also very close to 415, close to where this trend line happens to be, I think we still favor the upside as we're still making higher highs and higher lows. And there's still a lot of buyers who are defending this very, very nicely. So we'll see if we hold support, but I do favor that what's going to happen is we dip a bit, we bounce, and we just continue to uptrend slowly, trying to make our way back up towards 430 plus. So I favor upside for Tesla. This is going to continue to uptrend as the most likely possibility, so long as we hold the support right over here. Now, going back to a bunch of our ETFs, looking at SPY, we look very bullish. We're making higher highs and higher lows. We're also breaking structure right here, so it's continuing to remain bullish. The trend is still bullish. However, there is a very, very tough resistance between 605 to 608. This is where SPY saw a lot of chop appear in the past. So I presume what's going to happen is we're going to push more to 605 to 608 in that range, which is where SPY saw a lot of sideways price action. And once we achieve that, I think there's a very good chance we're going to be looking for a lot of sideways price action right up there. So I think SPY is going to be going to this range right up here. I think there's a good chance we're about to hit that zone. So look for more upside as the most likely possibility. If we lose 600, we're looking for 597 and 594 as our supports. I don't favorably lose 600 yet. I think we push a little bit higher to get close to all-time highs. Then we might see some consolidation. We'll see if we get a rejection or not. But for now, look for a little bit more upside into this range. Then we'll probably see a lot of sideways price action. And we'll see if we go higher or not, depending on different factors. But for now, I do see a little bit more upside coming. So just keep that in mind for SPY. For the QQQ, we're breaking structure. We had this resistance where we rejected many, many times. And in this case, we're trying to break through this. So I think that there is going to be this tough resistance to be watching for right up here. So as we kind of like progress and hit these new levels, we're looking at this tough resistance very close to about this 530 area and also at 527, which is the previous resistance. So like right up here. So in my view, I think that there's a very, very good chance that we try to push a bit more and we end up hitting that resistance. I think that we might be trying to push into this zone here. We'll see if we break 527, if not 530. Then we'll see if we get a rejection off of that. It all depends on if we break resistance or not. So I think we go a little bit higher. I think we push a little bit more into this resistance, and we'll see if we get some kind of rejection if we break past it. But look for an attempt from 527 to 530, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For the Russell 2000, we look a bit more bullish. We need to try to hold above our key support, so make sure you watch that very, very closely. If we were to lose 228, we're looking for a dip to about 226.5 to fill that gap. And as long as we're above, if we could break 230, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 233. I think the odds are favoring the IWM pushing even higher for a little bit of a dip and a bounce. I think we might be trying to ride, this resistance right back up here. But the problem I see is that there's going to be tough resistance in the low 230s. So even if we do push a little bit more, I would be very careful to see what kind of reaction we get. It's going to be a tough resistance. So look for a bit more upside and then we'll see how we end up reacting. For ES, we look bullish because we're breaking structure right here. We broke it very, very nicely. We're also breaking these highs, which looks pretty good. There's a tough resistance at 6,100, so I do expect us to push to about 6,100 or so. We're very close to that. And we'll see how it reacts to this. If we do break that, we could go a little higher to about 6,125. Then we'll see if we get a rejection off this resistance up here. That's also close to where our chop zone happens to be. So if we break 6,100, we're looking for 6,125 or above, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. If we lose 60.80, we could turn back down, but as of right now, I favor the upwards direction. For NQ, we're breaking this resistance here. We had resistance rejected, and now we're making higher highs and higher lows. If we manage to break past resistance around 22,000, we're looking for an attempt to go higher, and if we can't do that, we could dip back down. As of right now, I'm favoring that this is going to most likely try to push even higher to try to get back up towards these highs where this resistance is. So I think that we could be getting very close to about 21,875 to 22,000, and we'll see if we get a rejection or not off this resistance. So watch this resistance right up here, and also where this imbalances, and we'll see how we end up going from here. So we should be pushing closer to 22,000, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For Bitcoin has this resistance up here around this 107,000 to 108,000 area. Our support's going to be down here around 104,000 to 102,000. I think what's going to happen to Bitcoin is this kind of looks like a head and shoulders. Might see a small dip here as we're starting to see liquidity being drawn away. So I think we might be revisiting 104 to 102,000. We'll see if we bounce off that or not. But watch for a little bit of a dip and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. So it might be a small dip coming to Bitcoin. Now, going into the individual tickers, we have Nvda. It's looking bullish. I said yesterday I wanted to see this thing break 140 to continue to push, and I was talking about how there's a nice accumulation forming right here, which made me think that we're going to see a nice move. However, just know this. We're not super bullish. We're not super bearish. We're actually in the middle. So when you look at the last couple of months since October, we've been going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between supply and demand. And for the shorter term, we are looking a bit more bullish, right? A little bit more bullish and a much larger range for the longer term. So just keep that in mind. If we end up losing 140, watch 137. As long as we're above 140, however, we're looking for a move back up to about 144. And if that breaks, we're looking for 150. I am favoring that this is going to dip a bit and start pushing for essentially the 140, very close to 144 to 145. And if we break that, we're looking for 150 as it looks bullish. We might even try to go all the way back up towards these highs again. So I think there's a lot of upside potential for Nvidia. But at the very least, we're looking for essentially 142, 144 to 145 first and eventually, the higher levels. As far as Tesla goes, like I said before, as long as we're riding this trend line, we remain bullish. Like I said before, even if we do see a dip like this, I think we might just slowly try to ride this higher and try to make our way up, at least for the time being. So there's a lot of potential in the chart as we're making higher lows, and because we're forming another accumulation right here, which could lead to more upside as time goes on. So it's looking quite good. As long as we hold the trend line, we're going to be favoring for 30 plus to be breaking. For Apple, we're on a big downtrend right now. We need to see it try to base at 220. Otherwise, we could be dumping to 218. I'm hoping that it tries to balance a little bit, because here's one trend you may notice. When you go back, you will see that Apple has a tendency of rejecting, pumping a little bit, 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 and then rejecting. So it might try to pump a little bit all over again. So it's a very interesting pattern right here. We're trying to hold support and form a base at this 220 area. This is also previous support historically, if you go back on the chart like this. So this is a very, very key zone, 220. It's psychological. As long as we hold this, I'm looking for a move back up towards this imbalance at 225 to 226. I'm hoping Apple tries to see a small bounce tomorrow. We'll see if we get a rejection off that or not. But for now, I'm going to be looking for that as the most likely move. But if we can't hold 220, then I'm going to remain bearish, so just keep that in mind. With that being said, guys, that's it for my main 5. Let's just talk about the rest of these and be kind of quick. Netflix is very explosive. We're going to be seeing if this could break 1,000. If that's the case, we're going up to about 1,020 plus. It's very, very strong, very, very bullish, so just keep that in mind. For MSTR, we're looking pretty good here. We have a nice inverse hand shoulders double bottom. However, there's a little bit of weakness simultaneously since trying to hold support. So I think we consolidate between 380 and 400 for some time, trading sideways before we see a much larger move as the most likely possibility. So look for a dip to about 380 and some sideways price action like this, and then this could lead to a big bounce as there's a nice accumulation right here. So I'll be watching that very closely. Celsius looks a little bit weaker. We were not able to hold above our key levels. I was hoping that would happen today, but we failed. We were not able to hold 27. If we reclaim 27.5, we bounce up to 28.5. If not, we could be dipping back down to 26.5. So keep that level in mind. Supermicro has a double bottom like structure. As long as it holds above 32, we're looking for an attempt to get back up towards resistance at 34.6. So this is looking like a double bottom here, and this is favoring 34 plus to eventually break out like that. So I see potential in this. For Palantir, we look a bit more bullish. As long as we don't end up losing 71, I think we're favoring that we want to go higher towards the 76 area. So I see potential in this, try to kind of like push like this. So I think 76 plus could be coming, as there's a lot of potential so far. Rivian is showing a little bit of weakness, but we're trying to hold this 200 EMA, the red line right here, as our support. So what might happen is we get a little rebound like this to grab liquidity, and then if we reject, if we can't hold above 14.04, we could pump and then reject back down like this. So watch that very, very closely. For SoFi, we're in a very, very nice uptrend so far, breaking resistance. If we break 18, we're looking for 18.5. And if we lose support right here around 17.8, we're looking for a dip back down towards 17 or below. So I think we're favoring 18.5 plus, so give this the time it needs. For AMD's on a very, very nice uptrend so far. If we end up losing 20.5, we look for a dip. Otherwise, this is forming a nice double bottom and a nice accumulation. I think that this is kind of consolidating between 121 and 123, so it's going to do that for some time before it slowly inches its way up like this. So I favor that a little bit more. For ARM, we look a bit more bullish, just like we talked about yesterday. Very, very nice move to the upside, forming a double bottom. If we were to lose 156, we're looking for a dip for 152. And as long as we're above our key level at 156, I think we are favoring, we want to go up to about 162. So let's see if 160 breaks to push to 162, so give this the time it needs. For Coin has a nice double bottom like structure right here. We have this resistance at 300, which makes me a little bit concerned. We haven't been able to break that yet. If we break 300, we're looking for 308. And if we end up failing, we're going to be looking for a dip. So it might kind of dip like this to like 285 or so, consolidate for a bit. And if we could break 300, we're going to be looking for that move to about 308. We'll have to see. It might consolidate for some time before it tries to get that break. For Amazon, I'm a little concerned because we have a tough resistance right here. So if you look at, for example, this zone right here of resistance at this 233 to 230 zone, we'll be watching to see what kind of reaction we get. I think there's a good chance we try to push a little higher to about the low 230s, which is where this resistance is. And we'll see if Amazon gets a rejection or not. So just be a little bit careful with it. As you guys can see, we saw a lot of consolidation, this 230 area. So it's a tough resistance. We'll see if we push a little bit more and reject or not. So watch that resistance very closely. For others out there, we have Meta. Meta has a nice double bottom that's formed here. If we end up losing 609, we dip back down. As long as we hold that, we're going to be looking for a bounce. I'm favoring this is forming a nice inverse hand shoulders accumulation, so we're looking for an attempt to push for 625. For Microsoft, we have a nice inverse hand shoulders. If we end up losing 428, we're looking for a dump to 426. As long as we hold this, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 438. We're in the middle right now. We're very flat, but I think this could slowly push a little bit higher for about 437 to 438. Now, Google's not looking as good, however, because we got this rejection again. So as we hit the low 200s, we tend to reject. As we hit 190, we tend to get bought back up. If it breaks 202, we turn bullish. Otherwise, if it can't do that, there's going to be a risk of this coming back down to about 196.5, then maybe bouncing. But I just see a lot of sideways price action continuing. It might dip to about 196.5, so just keep that in mind, and we'll have to see what happens from here. For Google, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We have to, sorry, not Google. Sorry, I'm talking about GameStop. If GameStop could hold 27, we're looking for a bounce to about 28.2. Even though there's a bit of a downtrend here, I think it could try to bounce for 28 for a small move up. AMC needs to try to break past 3.57. Otherwise, we could be dipping closer to about 3.3. So give it some time. For DJT, we got this big rejection. We're going to be looking for 34.6 as our main support at the 200 EMA. So this might be dipping a little bit lower after Trump's victory. We're not really seeing a nice move so far. The VIX is dipping a bit. We have these gaps to fill. It might dip a little bit more as the S&P 500 tries to pump, but then watch support, especially at 14.4, and then as we get closer to the 13s, it's going to be approaching support. It's very close to that, so that could be a sign the VIX may bounce soon. It depends on if the market forms a top or not. The 10-year is dipping a bit. We'll have to see what this does. Also, we'll have to see what the dollar does depending on our next inflationary report and also the next FOMC meeting, which is about a week away from now. So we're just waiting to see. We're trying to hold support here. We'll see if 108 or not fails on the dollar. But my view of the market is more bullish. Right now, we're favoring the bulls a bit more. So we are still favoring higher highs and higher lows. Even for Tesla, we're still holding support. So if we do get that dip, we could continue to consolidate and push higher. But we'll see, just to be safe, as you watch our key levels. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow with another update. Until then, I appreciate you guys for your attention, your likes, and everything else like that. I also just want to genuinely help you guys through all the difficult volatility we're seeing in the markets. And I'll be back with another upload tomorrow morning. Thank you for listening. Have a good day and peace out.